Hey, everybody, welcome to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who want momentum in their business, family, and finance get through the valleys and up the mountain to the very own View from the Top. So glad you joined us and are listening in today. My name is Wally, and I got Big A in the studio. It's not really a house. It's a studio. It's what it is.
Yeah. You know what I'm excited about today, Wally?
No, I don't. I have no idea.
The bass are hitting top water. It's like they're hitting buzzbaits right now. And I'm like, I've been waiting for this moment. I know all the listeners are so excited out there today, but it has absolutely made my day. Just so you know, the weather's beautiful in Nashville the fish are hitting top water. So I'm pretty pumped.
The fish are, as you know, like a shirt that says that, like, today's a great day, the fish. But yesterday was not a great day for either you or I.
No, I was in a funk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad the fish are hitting top water today. But yes,
to be grateful for.
You know, it's funny. It doesn't even matter what it is. But you know, Robin and I have been going through some challenges. We've got some family members with some health challenges, and man, it's got me down. Like I was in the tank. I went to my grandson's baseball game. By the way, when you have a grandson that's really good at sports or a granddaughter that's really good at sports, just get ready if you don't have grandkids yet, because I got to the ballpark at 12:30 right after lunch, and it was about 45 minutes from here. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to watch one or two games. No. They kept winning, and it was 10 o'clock at night when I left the ballpark. I was there 10 hours. Yeah, it was past my bedtime. But anyway, listen, I'll do anything for my grandkids. But on the way home from the park, I had about an hour drive. And man, I probably would have cried if I hadn't been 62 years old. I'm like, I got in this despair. It was just like this, no radio was on. I was just riding and I was reflecting over all the things that Robin and I have been dealing with. And man, I went to a dark place. I mean, it was terrible. And I didn't stay there too long, maybe a half hour, just contemplate. But here's the danger spot for me is when I said, I just don't care anymore. Not just about that situation. It was about like, I just don't care anymore. And maybe I was having a pity party, but the reality is that all of us have thresholds, right? We have points that we break. And I've been through a lot in my life. And there's only a couple of times that I can ever remember feeling that level of despair. And so got home. I didn't talk to Robin about it. I got home, took a shower, went to bed, got up the next day and, worked. And then I called you after we got through with our call. And I said, man, I just got to talk a minute. Like I'm in a dark spot right now. And I guess the reason that we probably need to talk about this, it's the reality of everyone, right? We all get in dark spots. So I guess my question for you, Wally, is how do you work through that? Like, what do you do when you catch yourself kind of in a bad spot?
Yeah. So not as serious, the situation that you're in with your family members, but I had a situation just yesterday that, seemingly on the surface doesn't seem like a big deal, but I think we all have those moments. So what had happened is I'm just going to call it what it is. All right. I'm just put it out there. I'd spent 45 minutes to an hour crafting this email about like getting everybody involved and we're refining our mission from View from the Top.
Right.
And we've been working on it for a while. And I really wanted to get that out to the whole team, everybody on the team, and just get their feedback. So I worked on this thing and I sent it out to everybody. And pretty quick, I get an email back from you. It's like, yeah, this is good. No need to work on this anymore. I'm just going to say a couple things. I'll circle back around. Okay. In that moment, all I felt was the same feelings that I had with a previous ex-partner in a business that I was in, where like in the past, what I would have done right then, as I would have been like, I would have gone down a deep, dark hole. And I started to, like, my mind started to go there. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a waste of time. What in the world? I ain't doing this for the rest of my career. Like, literally, like those thoughts creep in so fast. But very quickly, the Holy Spirit's with me. So very quickly, the Holy Spirit's like, whoa, hold up. And you know what it was? You know what changed it for me? Sonia sitting next to me and I was complaining a little bit and she was just being kind and in her own way. And I stopped and I was like, Holy Spirit just put in my mind is like, But what does a leader look like? Like, you've had these situations before, and you know this one's different. Like, you know that Big A's heart, right? His motivation is very different than your experience in the past. You're allowing the emotion to control your
Mm,
actions, not the actual, like, what is it that leadership needs to look like for you? And I can come out of this better as a leader, and I can put those things in the past,
that's good.
or I can, like, let this control me for the rest of my day, ruin my day, potentially my week, and even put a wedge in relationships that doesn't need
Mm,
to be there.
mm.
So totally different than yours,
Sure.
but
It's still a
that
funk.
so easy.
Right.
You can get into that. You can.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
close. It was
Yeah.
so close.
Yeah. Thank God Sonia was there. I don't know where we'd be today without her. So
No,
I'm
no, I
glad she
knew.
encouraged
I
you
trust your
along.
heart. I trust your heart, man. For
Oh,
sure, I trust
that
your
was
heart.
so
It's
good.
totally different, but that feeling, right? Just that immediate in the moment, like,
Sure.
oh, I was like,
Sure.
oh, and I just had
Yeah.
to work through that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good. We never know on the other side what anybody's dealing with and what their perspective is on it. And I'm so guilty of doing those things as well and making assumptions and presuming on what was taking place or their level of interest or disinterest. And,
hmm
we've been able to develop through our friendship great communication and the ability to share those frustrations. Years ago, you might not even shared that with me.
no,
And I'm so
no,
grateful today that you do. And so we're able to have friendships like this that we can talk each other through the funk, right? And some of
right.
the things that I think that we need to do for the listeners out there today is think of things you're grateful for. Just
Mm,
go back for a moment, as Sonia was encouraging you to do.
hmm
Hey,
hmm
just think about the leadership, think about where his heart's at, think about where you're at. For me, it was thinking about my family, thinking about my grandkids, thinking about all the guys in ISI and all the people that we coach and the people that we try to educate and teach on View from the Top podcast. It's like, no, man, there's other things that can motivate you and can get you up. The other thing that we've got to do is be willing to share. A lot of people isolate themselves and they recluse, and the problem just manifests. It magnifies in your mind even greater. And for me, I always call my closest inner circle and I admit, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Help talk me through that. Sometimes they're like, no, you're spot on and you need to be in the funk. Or, no, man, you need to get out of that. Don't allow the enemy to control your mind. Work through that, push through that. Don't allow yourself to stay there. So I want to encourage everyone that's listening today to think through how you deal with that. And if you do recluse, get a few people that you're close to, share this, be intimate, be vulnerable, be authentic with some really close friends, really start listing out. And this happened to me not terribly long ago, not to this degree, but I journaled 50 things that I was thankful for. And by the next day, I was ready to charge hell with a water
That's
pistol. I
right.
was ready to go. And it just helps you work through these things. And
Yeah.
so, hey, if you're in the funk today, go out there today, share with some of your friends, work through it, think the things you're grateful for. And I promise tomorrow you're going to feel a lot better.
That's really good. You have this saying that you said before, Big A. I love it. It's isolation is the enemy of excellence. And I think we do get ourselves, when we get ourselves in that hole and don't have good people around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hey, our guest that we have on today kind of talks about this a little bit, but in a
Yeah.
different way. He's
Yeah.
talking about um,
How great leaders build unstoppable
I
teams.
had to look at my notes. I was like, how do
I
I say
know,
this?
I
Because it was
know.
all so good.
Yeah,
Frankly, I was
it
like,
was.
which
There were
one
so
do I
many things
say?
he
I took all
talked
these
about.
truth bombs. I was
I
like,
know
which one do I say?
you can't even narrow it down. There was
Oh,
so much. And Mike Michalowicz has been a great guy, great friend for a number of years. You'll see in the interview, he's written a host of books. Some of them are my favorite. You'll have to
mm.
listen to the interview to understand why it's my favorite. The book absolutely changed the way we do some things in our business. And so, hey, without any further ado, let's bring in Mike Michalowicz.
Let's get him in here.
Well, Mike, it's good to have you today, buddy. Hope you're doing well, getting things going today.
I'm doing great. Big A, it's awesome to be with you and Kevin.
I was thinking about when you and I met, and I was going back and I was like, man, I've met a lot of folks, and Mike and I've been friends for a long time. And I was thinking through it. And then it dawned on me, I was at Podfest years ago, and I get a text message from Chris Kremitzos, the owner of Podfest. And he said, hey, Big A, he said, you need to get up here. I got somebody to introduce you to. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm right in the middle of a conversation, but I come up, you and I start talking. And
Right.
that was years ago, like a
Yeah.
long time ago, and we seemed to hit it off pretty well and stayed in contact. And you even blessed us with your presence at our live event, man.
It
You
was kind
came
for you to
in,
invite me. And I dare say
rocked the mic.
I schnookered you into buying the meal that first time we met. I
I
dare say.
know. I remember. I haven't forgotten that.
Right.
We'll get around. I'll make sure it's your turn.
It is my
next time.
turn.
So yeah, I'll capitalize on that. Jimmy Kelly's is my favorite restaurant here in Nashville. So when you're here visiting Nashville, I'll be your guest. And
Let's
so
do it. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I know you have your event coming up. I'm going to be down there at Don Miller's place.
Yeah.
Just, our calendars are off just by hours. That
I
time.
know. I wanted you so bad to come to the summit, but hey, we'll do it again. We'll be doing it again in February, and it'll be fun, and you'll get another invite. So we'll just do that then. Listen, the reason I wanted to have you on, man, you're such a practical guy that you implement what you teach. And that's what I love about that. You've written so many books, we've already talked about that a little bit, but I'm going to have to come clean and tell you that of all the books you've written, Profit First is hands down my favorite book. And I know you got a new one coming out. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the reason, Wally, the reason I was thinking, why is that one my favorite, is because I implemented the processes and systems that you laid out in the book. Like I did the thing, right? And we even took everyone in Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind through Profit First. And we have just this tribe of people now that are Mike Michalowicz followers because of Profit First. It's such a huge, huge part of what we do now. We've got like Rocky Lavani, and I know Rocky is one of your coaches. Then Scott Beebe is a big proponent of Profit First. He teaches people all over the country. And I just want to tell you, man, hats off to you. That was just a phenomenal book. All your books were good, but that one was my favorite.
Yeah, that was the one. Thank you, brother. And coincidentally, I was just at the studio today, so my voice may be a little grovelly, re-recording the audio. The licensing rights have expired with, there was a sub-right owner, and Penguin, that's my publisher, is reacquiring the rights. But kind of like a song, you just don't get your song back. You got to re-record the song. So I'm re-recording the entire book. But it's also a blessing in disguise because I'm inserting new stories like Scott's, like Rocky's, other stories of people who have implemented it and where they stand now. Profit First is 10 years old this year.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of updates that I'm sharing in the audiobook. So that's fun and exciting.
Those fundamental principles never go away, though, right?
Yeah, they don't.
They're timeless. And so that's what's so good about it. You don't know this. I think this is the first time you've heard this, but I'm going to share it real quick. So I've made a practice out of doing certain things to help people do book launches and things like that. So you didn't ask for it, but on one of your past books, I forget which one it was. I think it was Fix This Next. The book was phenomenal. And I just came in my office where I'm standing now, and I did a little spoof on the book about 2 minutes. And I was a little bit perturbed at you at first. Let me tell you why. So I send this 2-minute blurb, and you didn't even respond. It wasn't even like, hey, bro, thanks for that. Like I didn't ask for it, but thank you for sending, the testimonial. And then the next day, I get this email from you, and you're promoting the book. And I look, and I'll be dadgum if I wasn't on the front cover. You were promoting that video to everyone. And I'm like, man, I just got in front of about a G of people on your list.
That's right.
Because I did this little random acts of kindness. And I use that example teaching guys all the time. You never know where it's going to end up. So
that's right. I hope I asked your permission first to share that.
Yeah, you didn't. But anyway,
go
ahead.
My gosh. Well, 100,000 people, I apologize.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's all in. So.
Yeah. Listen, you can use that anytime, Mike. So
rock and roll.
You got a blanket permission to use any of those videos. That was so fun, though, man, to open that up. And I'm going to read about your book, and there's big A on the front cover of your, email blurb. So it was fun. Mike, I wanted to bring you in today because of your knowledge and your experience, and because I like you. You're a good guy. And you teach on some of the principles about how great leaders build unstoppable teams. And we have so many small business owners that are trying to build these teams, right? Some of them have pretty good teams.
Yeah.
Others want to level up. And I want you to help me understand how we can better, recruit people, how we can retain them, how can we raise the bar for the current staff that we've got. And I wanted to bring you in to share with us a little bit. So take us there.
Yeah. Oh, I have a whole download for you. I've been researching this for at least 7 years now. I don't have it specifically tracked because it is one of the biggest challenges small businesses face, particularly post-COVID, where employees, people feel we have even greater freedom. We've kind of experienced this reverse golden handcuffs. It used to be if you compensated an employee well enough, if you set up an environment for them that was adequate, that you've handcuffed them, so to speak, to stay with your organization. But now it's the reverse. Employees seem that they can dictate whatever they want, however they want. They've handcuffed the owners of the business. It's not necessarily always a bad thing, but that was a challenge I had to overcome. How do you find people in an environment where you can't, and so forth? Well, as I started doing this research, I came across a story I just feel compelled to share because it's a fascinating story. It comes out of Russia, and there's a parallel one that happened here in the U.S. There is a museum in Russia called the Boris Yeltsin Presidential Center. And similar to the US, when a president retires or expires, they dedicate a facility to them. And in this museum in Russia, they have artwork. And one of the most famous art pieces is called Three Figures. It's a modern contemporary piece. It's three faces, kind of like our podcast right now, the three of us, but minus eyes or face. It's just a blank face. It's kind of an interesting contemporary thing. Well, they hired a security guard. His name was Alexander Lesaliev. They hire him on his first day after they closed the museum. This is a multi-million-dollar piece of artwork. He grabs a scripto and draws eyes on the painting. Well, don't do that anywhere, but don't do that in Russia. Really, I don't know what happened to Alexander. But this became international news of how he destroyed it. What's interesting is here's a brand new hire who was given explicit rules and regulations of what his job is, and he defied it, destroying it. Now, there was a parallel story that happened around the exact same time. This is only a year or two ago. In Baltimore, Maryland, there's a museum called the Baltimore Museum of the Arts, and they decided, the operators of the museum, to engage the guards in a unique way. They made an exhibit called Guarding the Art. They invited their team of security guards, they have about 50. They said, who wants to be a curator for this exhibit? They hired, ultimately 17 people applied and got accepted into the program. So 17 guards that basically their job is stand there and direct people to the bathroom and protect the art pieces, but that's it. You don't get engaged with. Now their job was to select the art, determine how the layout should be in the museum, the colors, the sequencing, the flow, the descriptions, all of the curation process. Fast forward, they went through this process together for about 3 months. The most popular exhibit, I believe, of all time at the Baltimore Museum of Art was Guarding the Art. The people showed up in throngs for the entire exhibit. The best part was one of the guards, his name was Ben York, said at the conclusion, or while he was guarding this art, his favorite piece was the thing called 50 dozen. It was pencils, number 2 pencils, built in the shape of a chair. And he said, well, I did fantasize about sitting on it, just like Alexander fantasized drawing eyes on it. He felt ownership over this art. He said, because I was involved in the curation, it was more than someone else's piece of art. It was my own art. And because he felt that way, he cherished it and protected it. When he came to his curation, he set up security cameras to protect this piece in particular. It's interesting, 2 people in the same role, and one goes down this path of destruction, and the other one, exaltation. They raise up the art. My favorite part, which was the conclusion of the story, is the event opened with a private ceremony for just family of the guards and friends. They had a few hundred people come. And I don't know, Big A, Kevin, if you've been to a graduation where they say, please hold your applause to the end.
Yeah.
And no one can in the beginning.
No.
But by the middle, there's this big kind of dip where you almost feel embarrassed for the kid that goes up and there's not a single applause. That didn't happen here. They said, please hold your applause to the end. And the rambunctious crowd, the excited crowd, cheered the first person on and the second person even more. And by the end, it was pure ruckus. They were so excited and elevated. Fast forward today, this was a couple of years ago, the retention, no surprise, for these guards has been 100%, which is atypical in this industry. It's a high turnover industry, except for 2. 2 guards did leave to become curators. And one of them is a curator back to the museum on special assignment. What I love is through the leadership at the Baltimore Museum of Art, they elevated a team that's often overlooked to a team that now embraces and moves the organization forward. And well, in Russia, it was the total opposite. That's what this stuff is about that I'm teaching about recruiting, retaining, and raising the bar.
Mike, do you know anything about who was the brainchild behind that at that particular
Yeah,
location?
it was two women, and the names slipped my mind. I actually interviewed them personally, but one was the master curator, and one was a person on the board, and was actually the board director. Again, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name.
No,
She was
it's fine.
visiting the museum and walking, and she noticed how people didn't engage with the guards. And she looked and she says, gosh, what is this all about? And she actually started talking to some of the guards, and they explained, well, I just sit here and all I do is give directions to the bathroom and make sure that no one messes with the art. And through that dialogue, she learned, well, these people really understand the art better than many of the curators because these guards are staring at it all the time. They're reading the literature. They're overhearing the conversations about the art. They have a better perspective. And that's another lesson when it comes to our teams. Often the person closest to the challenge is the most intimate of that challenge and can provide the best insights for navigating through it. Many leaders, the good leaders say, we have to get through this, and they try to scheme away. But the great leaders say, we need to get through this, and the person closest to it probably has the best answers.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Selfishly, I want to know this. Wally's a leader, and I'm a leader. How important is the leader's role in the performance of any team?
It's everything. I don't know if you guys have heard of the book, Turn the Ship Around.
Yeah. That's
David
a great
Marquette.
book. Yeah.
So it was a submarine. The ship was a submarine,
Mhm.
and he became captain of it. It was the lowest ranked, lowest rated ship in the naval system.
Mhm.
Now, what was interesting is only one person was changed. The old captain was out and the new captain was in. It took time, but they became the defining standard for ships. They became the best. So the worst became the best without changing a single person, except for the leader. There was another study in Jocko Williams' book, which is Extreme Ownership, where they talk about the Navy SEALs. And in this case, the Navy SEALs, they do a boat race. You take a rubber boat, run down the beach, go out into the water, come back. It's grueling. And they run this over and over again. And they found that this one team won over and over again. They took the lowest ranked team, the least performing team, and the best team, and they swapped the leaders. Well, the leader for the lowest ranked team was accusatory, pointing. The great leader was embracing, encouraging. And when they swapped them, the worst team, not right away, but quickly, within a few races, started becoming middle of the pack. And by the fourth or fifth race was the best team. And the best team quickly became the worst team. Again, finger pointing and stuff broke out. There's a saying, good leaders make people believe in them. Great leaders make people believe in themselves. That's what a great leader does.
Yeah. And I love that. That's so important. We know that everything rises and falls on the back of the leader. At our church recently, I was talking to our pastor, and he was talking about various topics related to things that we were going to do. And he started to kind of insinuate that one of the persons I said, well, wait a minute. It's not his responsibility. It's your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're at the top of the food chain, right? You're the one. He goes, no, you're right, Big A. He said, I need to own that.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do, right? Leaders need to own it. Good, the bad, the different, we need to own it, but give the praise to those people that deserve, that's done the work. So
for
Mike,
sure.
Mike, you said something a couple times, I think, when you're just talking about time. I think both the stories you mentioned, it takes time.
Yeah.
Right. From a leadership perspective, like you put a leadership change in, even though it turned out well, it took time. A lot of business owners listening to us today, and that's probably one asset, if you want to call it that we all have, that we're very protective of. And it's really easy to get in this mindset of, well, I don't have time for that. Right.
Yeah.
It seems like that's going to be a lot of work. It's going to take us a year, 2 years, 3 years. Like, what do you say to the business owner that's thinking that right now?
It isn't about devoting more time. I think that's a common point of confusion, saying, I only have X number of hours in a week and I'm already maxed out. I can't put more into this. I'm not saying that. What I mean by time is the elapsing of time, the quantity of overall time. I almost kind of mixed the metaphors here, but I'm not saying you got to do more. You just have to wait longer. Because what we have to do is win over trust. There's a business in California that's managed by a friend of mine. Her name's Stacy Duff. She's the CEO and president. She's not the owner of the organization. But she came in to fix a company that was struggling. And they went from, it was a small business, from 7 million now to 23, 24 million. The day she started, she gave out a card to every employee that said, I have your back. I'm here to listen to any challenge you have, and we will work on it together. And I can't say it was spit on, but people were like, this is nonsense, or this is garbage. Are you kidding me? And she gave everyone this card. Fast forward a year later, they said, oh my gosh, she's actually the real deal. Within 2 years, she had won over the team. And the dissenters actually left and said, no, this is not for me. So saying something and doing something are two different things. Doing means people observe you demonstrating a certain behavior over time, repeatedly. And that's where trust is won. So when David Marquette took over that submarine, it wasn't like the next morning they said, new leader, we got this. He had to demonstrate over and over through his behaviors that this is the new direction they're heading in, that everyone will be embraced. Everyone had this concept of personal ownership or psychological ownership we can dig into. It's a really fascinating study. And he gave people psychological ownership. But it took time for it to develop and for that trust to come about. It's kind of like spinning up a flywheel. You can't just torque it up and it's spinning. You got to exert energy. And over time, it gets faster and faster. But once it starts rolling, then it becomes an unstoppable force.
Mike, you talk about the FASO model.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so FASO are the 4 elements that great leaders exemplify to build great teams and to support teams and to retain teams. F, so it's an acronym. The F stands for fit. Most organizations do traditional organizational charts. Here's the titles, and we need people to fill these different roles. We need everything from a president to our legal department or HR and so forth. That's the mistake. Great leaders don't match talent to titles. They match talent to tasks. And I'll give you a quick example, but we can always, of course, dig in deeper. I had a CFO for my second company. We did a computer crime investigation. He wasn't really a CFO. He was admittedly a bookkeeper, a good one, but a bookkeeper. But I gave him a title because that's what I wanted to act like a big company. But then he actually believed that's who he was. He said, I'm a CFO. And I looked at all these different ads. CFOs get paid $750,000 to $1.5 million. I'm like, we don't even make that in revenue. Are you kidding me? But he believed that's who he was. But he didn't fulfill those components. So he wasn't a CFO and he couldn't fulfill it. So it caused dissension from him. The reverse happens too. We insert people into a title with all these expectations, but that's not where their talent is. And now they're unfit and they fall by the wayside. So great leaders say, what are all the different tasks we have within the organization, regardless of titles, and let's match talents. Instead of the traditional pyramid org structure, a web structure forms. A stands for ability. This is one of my favorite subjects, in that most companies interview for people's experiential ability, what's on your resume, and your innate ability. Not many companies do that, but more are. What's your Enneagram say, or your Myers-Briggs? But those two are wonderful, but it's only 20% of what we need. The biggest ability that's overlooked is potential ability. That's the 80%. The analogy I use here is, I think one of the greatest modern rock guitarists is Eddie Van Halen, who has subsequently passed away. But if I say the three of us are forming the band called Big A and the Boys, that's our new band.
There you go. Okay.
Right. Nice. Of course, it's Big A and the Boys. And we need a rock guitarist. Well, we could call Eddie Van Halen if he was still around and say, hey, Eddie, we'd love for you to join us. And he would laugh on the other end of the line, probably wouldn't answer in the first place, and says, yeah, I get paid $40 million a year for my band. I'm taken care of. Find someone else. But with potential ability, we realized we actually could have had Eddie Van Halen in our band. Here's what you do. You go back to the early stage when someone demonstrates potential. Now, Eddie Van Halen came from the Netherlands, moved to the US. He spoke only Dutch. So therefore, when he went to school, he struggled in school. He couldn't make friends because he didn't speak the language. So his best friend was his guitar ultimately. When he was 10 or 11 years old, he took some guitar lessons. And could you imagine back then, we reach out and say, hey, Eddie, we're starting a band. Seems like you're interested in guitar. You want to try out for us? He would have clamored to try out for us.
Sure.
Now, the thing is, of course, it takes time to develop potential. So the lesson is this, is what we need to do is build a structure that attracts people with potential. And when they reveal potential, we then develop it. A couple more things. Potential reveals itself always in 3 stages. First, in curiosity. Someone's interested. I'm curious about skydiving. Then There's desire. Desire is like, I want to do this repeatedly. I don't want to do skydiving. So I'm not your skydiving guy. The ultimate level is thirst. Thirst is where they can't quit it. So we use a technique called workshops. And this is one of the things I'm really excited about is I think interviews are a bad format for recruiting. They have a historically bad success rate. And anyone you interview that doesn't get hired doesn't know why they didn't get hired. So they're left out in the cold. And the one person you hire may work out or may not. Instead, we want to move to what's called a workshop environment. Workshop environment is where you invite in all the candidates, not for a job interview, but for education. So bring in all these people who want to play guitar and say, hey, we have a guitar workshop. Let's learn to play guitar together. While we teach the process, we observe who demonstrates thirst or desire. And those are the people we elevate and say, come back for more workshops. And then we cherry pick the best candidate. And this isn't theory. This is deployed by some of the best companies in the US. Home Depot. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to like one of those birdhouse building workshops. Okay. Do you know that's a recruiting platform? You go there with your kid, you build your little birdhouse. They have 2 employees observing who is the best participant, who knows this stuff, who is helping out other customers. They then tap you on the shoulder and say, you ever think about working at Home Depot? We'd love to have someone of your caliber work here. It's a recruiting platform. And I know Big A's into sports. I'm really into sports. Kevin, I maybe you are too. I played lacrosse, and I played lacrosse in college and high school. Back in high school, I went to a camp, and all universities do this. I went to Hobart Lacrosse. It was a big school in the Northeast for lacrosse. And there was 300 students there, all practicing and getting better. And a few kids, I was not one of them, got tapped on the shoulder saying, we'd love to see you play at Hobart. They recruited the best, the people with the thirst. But everyone, including myself, got better at the sport. And I went on to play at the college level. So run workshops, educate the people with potential, and they'll reveal themselves. So a couple more things. I'm diving a little bit deep here, so I'll avoid that. S stands for safety. We need an environment where we feel safe to be ourselves, where we feel physical safety too, of course, and what's called financial safety. And financial safety is not by paying people more and more. There's another way of doing that. And the last thing is ownership is where we give people a sense of ownership without giving them actual equity. It's actually called psychological ownership. And people respond by acting like owners themselves when you give them psychological ownership. So that's the FASO model, those 4 components.
Yeah, and that's really good. I love that. Now I've got to watch out for those workshops. I'll be recruiting.
I want to get you up here. We have a lumberjack workshop, so I don't know if that's of interest to you.
Maybe.
All right. You're showing curiosity.
Yeah, maybe we could go up one of those poles. I don't know, but I don't have the ability, and it's certainly not safe, and so I'm probably not going to do it.
All right. And you know what? It's funny as we're joking around about this, but that's a great vetting tool. That means you're not potentially a good lumberjack. And so it vets people out very quickly. The University of Chicago, their medical division, runs these workshops, and they invite people that are going to be employed for different functions to go through the experience itself. And people very quickly vet themselves out. Everyone says, I can do, but the people who really can do have the desire and then ultimately the thirst.
Mike, most things that you do are unconventional. That's why I like hanging out with you. I like to learn new things. And Wally and I are going through some things now with our structure here, going through our org chart and seeing, where the team players are going to fall. And I know you've got some opinions about the conventional, traditional org chart. Is it still effective? Is it still beneficial? If not, is there an alternative?
Yeah, the traditional org chart is a command and control chart. Command means the person or persons up top send down signals to the bottom, and it's like the telephone game. They can get interpreted or change. And then the hope is that stuff trickles up. So often there's many layers between the leader and the deliverer, the doer at the very bottom of the chart. And so communication breaks down. The second thing is the traditional org chart does focus on titles, as we talked about earlier, and therefore people often can fill components, but not all of it. It's the classic example where your sales guy who's selling well becomes your sales manager and then fails. He's got the title, maybe sales skills, but he doesn't have managerial skills. So he fills a small piece of it and then collapses. So what we want to do is a role chart. A role chart is where we specify all the different functions required from people of all types. And we give the freedom for different responsibilities, tasks to move irregardless, or regardless, I should say, of titles. So I'll give you an example. My own company, I had a salesperson who was a great closer, so to speak, but also was not someone that could farm. They weren't a good soft personality. They forced a hard decision. They were really good at tracking the data and closing a hard decision. Well, we had a receptionist who was actually really good at maintaining relationships and stuff. And we had her doing data entry, and admittedly, she sucked at that. So when we deployed our role chart, she was moved to be the farmer, if you will, to sustain the relationships, because that's what she was talented at. Our salesperson would close deals, but also do the data entry that we had in the reception role. By doing this, both those people sat into tasks now that they loved doing. They fell in love with the process because that was their natural tendency. And so they both elevated, and the results amplified significantly. So we want to move to a role chart aligning task to talent.
Yeah. I love that. I was having a conversation earlier today with someone about, if you're familiar with EOS at all, they have an accountability chart, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little different than role chart, but that idea, that concept of where like it's so easy to get caught into that title. I mean, how often do we do it, right? As business owners, the conventional wisdom says, go to ChatGTP right now and type in, what should my job position look like for X? And that's what we post.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, in a small business, though, there's so many little divots and angles and perspectives and opportunities that don't necessarily follow or need or should follow this, like, this is the way you do it.
Yeah.
And I love that.
And it becomes a trap because we see the aspiration, like, oh, to move up the chain, I have to achieve this new title. But people do things they're not fit for. And so what happens is many people are in positions where they're doing it adequately, but not superiorly, where they could have. Going back to Eddie Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen was directed, if you will, by his parents to be a drummer. But his father was an accomplished musician, and he had the propensity. But one day, Eddie came home playing drums and heard his brother Alex playing drums better. And Eddie said, I don't really like playing the drums that much. And so great leader dad said, well, you want to try guitar? And he's like, all right. And he was able to experiment and found his gift. And look what happened for both of those people. Instead of staying in the path they were told to take originally, they were given the flexibility to go where they naturally feel a calling.
The question for you, though, this path of not following roles, I just came out of recently doing a little bit of mentoring and some coaching where trying to tie market value salaries, compensation packages, right, what I'm going to pay people to roles, because that's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
Right. If we're going down this road of like blending and looking at matching task to talent and looking at ability, following your FASO model, how do we think about compensation? Is it different? Is it the same? How do we do that?
Yeah, it is different. We look at the impact people have. So it takes a little bit of time because you can't say, well, in the market, a receptionist makes X dollars, so therefore you'll make it. What you got to look at is say, here's the 10 things you're doing. Here's the significance and impact to the business that it has. You're driving revenue, or you're supporting the team that drives revenue or something. And if you do this at a high level, this is the value to the company. So it is a calculation. But what we do here at our company, because we use this model, we do have some people that have titles. We have a president for our company, almost out of necessity. When people call, I say, I want to talk to the president. Okay, you want to talk to Kelsey. Okay, right?
Oh, sorry, we don't have one.
Yeah, we're presidentless.
Right.
We have 21 people, but no president. So there's certain roles, but many of the people here don't have a title. Like my own card, it's over there, has no title. It's just like Mike. That's my title. The second thing is we do a profit distribution for all employees, and we do a flat, equal distribution. So every quarter, and knock on wood, we've had now 57 or 58 consecutive quarters of profit distributions. So we're on a good track record. Every quarter, when the distribution comes out, it's equally split. So you could be doing the quote unquote lowest level entry stuff. Someone doesn't need to clean the garbage and change the light bulbs here at our office. Or you could be doing the quote unquote highest end stuff, but you get the exact same distribution because you're contributing. The concept behind here is people should be rewarded for not just their contribution to the role, but the fact that they're supporting the team, sometimes emotionally, socially, they're contributing in some capacity. Secondly, we also want to demonstrate that there is no better value. Everything is necessary to the company. It is absolutely important that we have our trash removed. It is actually a big deal. So we want to reward that. And the last thing is when we give out a profit distribution, what we notice is everyone's really concerned about the profitability of the company. My own assistant, when I travel, I just had an event. This is about 6 months ago. It was at a 5-star resort, amazing venue. And when I arrived to stay, I wasn't staying there. I was staying at a Motel 8 or 6, whatever it is, down the street. And I'm like, why am I staying here?
Nice.
She goes, it's $80 a night versus $800 a night. That's why we're doing it. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. That's fine with me. And she said, because it makes us more profitable. And I want my team aligned around profitability because we're all sharing in it.
That is so good. Mike, I
Big
can
A,
see
Big A,
how
next time, man. I'm telling you right now.
Now
Get
you
ready.
guys are like, oh my
Brooke
gosh.
had me staying at home last time we had an event
There
here.
you
I didn't
go.
even get to
That's
stay.
the best.
Yeah, didn't even get to stay. But Mike, I can see a great motivation at the level of the guy changing the light bulbs and taking the trash out. Is it a demotivator for your top tier folks that feel like possibly that's not the conventional model and they're possibly forfeiting some of the profits?
Yeah, we don't see that. Now, it could be for certain personality types. So I can't deny it could be.
Right.
There's the kind of the eat what you kill type of mentality. And we intentionally don't recruit people that are like that. They're very money motivated. What's interesting we found is every employee here is more concerned about what the other person is making in the distribution than themselves. I hear it over and over again. Oh, that's so good that Kelsey or so-and-so got the $800 distribution, or whatever it is. Right. And admittedly, the biggest beneficiary is the owner of the company. Now, I own 100% of my business. There's this feel good that I'm doing the right thing. It links me to my team even more. And I suspect if one quarter we weren't in the position to give out a profit distribution, that my team wouldn't be that deterred, but it would hurt me. So I do acknowledge that perhaps the biggest motivation factor is back to the leader themselves.
I think comp plans too, right? I mean, obviously, if you have someone at a different, I'm not using levels, but you have different responsibility. If someone has a responsibility, it's impacting the bottom line in a sales type role. Like their compensation structure should be such.
Oh, and that's right. We don't have a flat conversation,
right? So the bonus is actually something different, or the distribution is something different,
right?
Than how their comp.
Yeah, we're treating people like equity owners. Like everyone has 100 shares in the business equally, and they get rewarded accordingly.
Yeah.
But this is something I want to share with you guys because I want to make sure we don't miss it. I found something really fascinating in my research and in our practical experience that most people in most scenarios are not motivated by actual ownership, but are more motivated by psychological ownership. So let me explain. A scenario would be a rental car versus a car that you have, your personal car. No one takes a rental car to a car wash. And the reason is we are told with our rental car, when you rent this, it's got to be returned with a full tank of gas. This is when you go to that demilitarized zone where you have to show your license for the 5th time. The spikes come down, the sirens go off. And they're saying, better come back with a full tank of gas, better be no scratches and dents, and the interior must be clean. So what some people do, when I say some, I mean me, the second I leave the DMZ, I'm doing like donuts in the parking lot. I'm hauling ass up to that traffic light and then jumping on the brakes because they're telling me how to comply. And anything that's outside the rules of compliance, I'm going to leverage that. There's a saying that I use. If we're forced to comply, we find a way to defy. And most employees are said, do your hours, bring these results. It's compliance orientation, and the natural human response is defiance. Now, the second scenario is that car in your parking lot or your own personal car. That car, sure enough, you're getting it car wash. You're tap it on the dashboard after a long drive and say, good job, baby. Our behavior is radically different. Now, here's the fascinating thing. For most people, we don't own either car. In the first scenario, the rental car agency owns it. In the second scenario, the bank owns it, and we're making car payments on it. So legally, we don't necessarily own the car, but we have 3 elements that trigger psychological ownership. One is we have control over it. We determine where we're going to park it. We don't have to comply with any rules. We choose where it goes. The second thing is we have intimate knowledge of it. We know the intricacies. We know that if we go over 60 miles per hour, there's a little squeak in the back rear tire. And we can personalize it. We can put up those fuzzy dice balls and stuff. If we give our employees the ability to control, give them intimate knowledge and personalization, they invoke the sense of ownership even without owning any of the business. So in the different roles my team is supporting here, we give them that degree of authority and it transforms their relationship to the business. Now, the last little story I want to share, I own 100 shares in Ford stock. I actually have legal ownership of Ford. I don't feel any obligation toward them. I don't drive by the factory and go, hey, Ford, go for it. In fact, it's caused a fiefdom that I look at Ford and say, you owe me. I invested in you. You better give back to me. It actually has me resenting the company when it doesn't perform. And when business owners give equity to an employee, there's a form of entitlement that's really at risk here. This can happen with ESOPs. People say, I want to start an ESOP and all my employees will feel empowered. No, they'll feel entitled. Now the company owes them because they own it. So be really careful around actual ownership versus invoking psychological ownership. And if you do both, if you do actual ownership, make sure there's a psychological component because that's what invokes people's real sense of belonging and elevating the bar for themselves.
Wow, that was a mic drop comment right there. Literally, that was good. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Hey, I know we're ending the time here, but we're at the tail end of COVID, obviously, and COVID, everybody says COVID affects everything, but has COVID changed the work environment? Do you still think that these things you teach still apply in light of our COVID situation and everything?
Yeah, great question. Yes, and even more, perhaps. There was inherent to the traditional model where we came to a common space and we saw each other. There was this socialization, which is so necessary for humans. As we lose the tactile experience, being together, we actually feel, it can affect our mental health. We feel separation, loneliness, which all triggers lower production, sometimes even resentment. So we as leaders need to engage with employees more. There's two ways I suggest doing it. One is our company, we do a one-on-one with every employee. We're now at a hybrid status. We still have an office. I'm physically here right now. Everyone can come in, but most people come in 2 days a week. On Tuesdays and Thursdays is the day everyone comes in. Mondays and Wednesdays, people work from home, and no one works Fridays. We're a 4-day work week for the last 5 years now. And so even pre-COVID. But the one-on-ones is an opportunity to meet with sometimes myself, but more often Kelsey, our president. And the first question is from the book called The Coaching Habit is simply, what's on your mind? We allow people to have that human connection again. And maybe 5 or 10% of the stuff is business and the other stuff is personal. But since we're talking about the personal, they're more engaged in the business. So it's an absolutely critical conversation that can be 15 or 20 minutes and sometimes an hour if something heavy is going on, but they feel connected. The second thing, and this has me really excited, is we do personal goal alignment. I used to think that the corporate goal was the goal for the organization. I remember my second company, I ran the numbers, we could do $10 million. I came out of the office, I called my 30 employees together and said, this is the year we're doing $10 million with great fanfare. And it was like air out of the balloon. Like no one cared. My trusted confidant, my assistant at the time, her name was Patty. She came to me and said, Mike, if we had 10 million, you get the bigger house, you get the new car. Why should we care? And that was the epiphany I needed. Everyone has their own personal goals. So what we do at our company is everyone every quarter talks about their personal goals. Someone wants to learn Spanish. Someone wants to learn to play guitar. Someone wants to spend more time with their family or buy a house, whatever it is. We document it all. Then we realize the goal of the corporation is the fulfillment of our collective path. The corporate goal is actually the goal of the owner. I want $10 million. It means something to my big fat ego, but that's only one of our goals. Someone needs to get a house and so forth. Now, the company's job is not to get that house. It's to keep that dream alive and say, how are you working toward that? And if we can support, maybe give direction, give some education, maybe give freedom on time, we support it, but we keep the dream alive. And we acknowledge the checkoff as they're doing it when they achieve it. So we have a big tree. It's on the other side of my office. It's this massive tree. It goes up 10 feet into the ceiling, but it was barren when we started. It's just a tree, trunk, and branches. Every time someone achieves a personal goal, we staple on another leaf to it and with their goal they've accomplished. I would say it's in full bloom. I would say there's maybe over 150 leaves on this tree, so much
Wow,
so
way
that
to
we got to
go.
start a whole forest here. And
That's
the team's
fantastic.
engaged accordingly because we put
Yeah.
their dreams as just as prominent, as important as my dream for our
Wow.
corporation.
Wow. Wow. That is so good. And you're keeping their dreams at the forefront of everyone's interest, and everyone celebrates together. You're on this journey
That's
together
right.
in its entirety. That is so cool. Mike, in your book, All In, your latest new book, you end with a story about your dad passing. What did you learn from a leadership perspective from your dad?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. And I'm reflecting on it now, so I'm getting emotional. My dad passed this last November, and I was there when he passed. I think it's the most powerful moment of my life, or one of them for sure. And he quietly died in his sleep. But the few days before he passed, he lost his ability to speak. He still had his full mind. He just didn't have his physical body anymore. And I asked him, and this is literally his final words. I said, "Dad, who's been the most important person in your life?" And it wasn't his parents. It wasn't a friend. He said, "Helen Fuller." And I quickly started to scramble and do research. I'm like, who's Helen Fuller? My dad grew up in the tenements of New York City. His parents came from Ukraine, and he was born in New York City in the tenements. I've been there subsequently. Horrible conditions, like atrocious. There wasn't much law on the conditions for poor people at the time, and he grew up under severe abuse from his alcoholic father, and his mother was put in an insane asylum, someone I never met. And when he was 13 years old, he had a transformative moment in his life. Helen Fuller worked for an agency, the Community Service Center in New York City, that went into poor populations and gave the kids a chance. She sat down with my dad one day and said, what's your dream? What's your vision?" And he's like, I don't even know what I want to do. She's like, "Let's just get you out of the city." And she sent him to a camp in Maine for a week. And I remember him talking about that throughout his entire life. I never knew she was the trigger behind it. When he returned, he saw a new potential for life. She's the one who said, "You got to join the military. That's the only way out of here. And you can get an education," which he did, and become an engineer, which he did, and transformed his life. He never laid a finger on me or my sister. He stopped the abuse then. And
Mm,
what's so
mm,
amazing is Helen Fuller was the person that transformed it. I think it's the greatest honor. I think she's the greatest leader. And she doesn't even know what she did. She loved my father into being. I think that's our roles as leaders,
mm.
that we have been given the greatest privilege to love others into being, to give them something they would have never been given. And what an honor if on their final breath, it's your name. That's why it's such a powerful story to me.
Mike, this is so good. Thank you for sharing today with us about how to recruit and how to keep and how to use a different mindset in going through our team. I mean, you've given us so inspirational abilities that I'm thinking about how I can run our team and what we can do. And so I'm just very motivated today. Tell us how anyone can get your book, All In. Where's the best place to go, and how can they contact you and learn more?
Thank you. So the book is actually in pre-order state. It's not even easily available. It's coming out January 1st, 2024.
Cool.
So, but you can pre-order it. The manuscript is done. It's just because of the supply chain issues. This is the new standard for books. So you can go
Yeah.
to Amazon. That's the best place. Type in All In by Mike, because you're going to have a little trouble finding it. There's a lot of books called All In right now. It'll get up there. It'll be the number one ranking at some point, but type in All In by Mike. You can pre-order it. I promise it'll transform you. And if you want to also dig in deeper, we have a company called the All In Company. We are coaching organizations, both big and small, through this process.
Wow, that's so cool. And there's some follow up that's going to be after this book as well, some other opportunities to learn more. And that's coming to you soon. So get ready for an announcement about that. Hey, if you need another blurb, let me know. I helped take your other book to #1 bestseller. I'll do
You
this one
did.
as well if you want me to do that. So, you know what you should do? You should package all 8 of these books together and give people an opportunity to buy them all one fell swoop,
I know, like the
because they're all
library. I know.
worth
I love
reading.
that.
They're all good.
I love that.
They're all good. Mike, thanks for being with us today, buddy. We appreciate you being here.
Aaron, Kevin, thank you both so much.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview today as much as I did. Mike is such an authentic guy. He just continues to bring experience He brings things that are practical in nature. We're able to apply those things to our team, regardless of how large they are. So I want you to think about today, what are some of these things that you can do to recruit better? How can you retain the group that you've already established? How can you keep at the forefront of your mind their goals, their ambitions, the things that they're really interested in? How can you put that in the forefront of your mind so that you and your entire team win? Listen, that's our objective here at View from the Top. We want you all to win. So go out there today and implement these strategies so you too can have that view from the top.
Thank you so much for listening in today. The easiest way to connect with us is really through our weekly email called The Climb. This thing is fantastic. Actually, it's not even weekly anymore. It only comes out once every other week. And so we just encourage you to go grab that. If you go to viewfromthetop.com/climb, that's viewfromthetop.com/climb, you'll be notified of all of the podcasts that come out on View from the Top. There's also a whole bunch of other little bite-sized topics that every small business owner, entrepreneur, and husband and father can use to help them live a life, help you all live a life of success and significance. So go do it now, viewfromthetop.com/climb. Get that to your inbox now. We'll see you next time.